there are just all these metaphors to healthy and unhealthy relationships that you have that are 100% personal relationships that I think pretending like we don't get into some of those same dynamics and patterns is a real downfall of business. Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. I'm Jody.
I'm Eliot.
And Eliot's story today, I'm really excited about this one. Eliot tells a story of, in his words, of him being emotionally pathetic. But
no wonder you're excited.
I don't think it has. It really gets into an issue that I don't hear talked about a lot. When your best and favorite people leave, the people that you've thrown your heart into, when they leave, and the emotional experience of that, really bucking against business is it is personal.
It is personal.
Very quickly, just as a reminder, please share your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, stories, anything you want to chime in on the conversation with our storyline. You can text our storyline, 410-205-6055. You can also call and leave us a voicemail, and we may just play that on the air. Last thing you can do is make your own little voice memo recording via any way that's easy for you, and just email that to talktous@sohere'smystory.com. Take it away.
Okay. So here's my story. And like so many of my stories, it's something that I'm not proud of. So for those of you, by the way, who are thinking,
Eliot's
hey,
business confessional.
It would be so cool to start a podcast because I get to brag about how I'm so awesome. This is the opposite of that.
Gotcha. Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah. So I had a person who worked for me. This goes back a number of years. And she was new at not only the job, but at the career. But I thought she was really good. I really liked her. We had a rapport. And I could see a lot of things in the future. It's like the version of, and I don't mean this in a creepy way, but it's like business love. You know, you have this new employee and you just
and we're going to get married and have babies and we're going to work together forever.
We're going to work together forever. It's going to be great, whatever. And we did. We worked together very well. And it was maybe 1 or 2 years. And she told me that she was going to go somewhere else. And the reason that she was going to go somewhere else was perfectly valid. It wasn't that she was going to somebody else that did exactly what I do and just wasn't me. Mm-hmm. You know, which sure, it's her choice. It would have been valid too. That
description of it is kind of funny.
Yeah, but it would have been valid because that's her choice, but it would have been even more hurtful. But she was going someplace where I could really see legitimately why she would want this experience in her career, how it could really help her, how it could be a learning experience and provide her with some directional where she really wants to go, because she was new when she came in, new in the profession and didn't have a lot of diverse experience in her industry. I was internally furious. But
angry.
I was angry.
Oh, interesting.
But that's not really where I didn't show that. The way what I chose to show her was hurt and petulant. I know. An intelligent
so you really
decision
rolled out
there.
Your toddler.
I rolled, yes.
Gotcha.
I channeled my toddler. Because truth to tell, I really was hurt. I've always said that the
Crushed
person who said, maybe, I've always said that the person who said, well, it's not personal, it's just business, either never ran his or her own business, or was just a moron. Because it is, I take it very personally. Yeah. And that I took personally because, and part of it, if I broke it down, this is where we veer into the pathetic. Part of it, if I broke it down, was like, how could she leave me? I mean, I was really... I thought there was great experience. She was learning a lot. We worked so well together.
And knowing you, I bet you invested a fair amount into it. I mean, I don't even mean dollars, but just like thought and like, here's a way I can help her get this experience. And,
I really wanted, my goal was, and it remains this with my employees, is I really want people to look back and say, one of the best things I did in my professional career was decide that I'm going to work with Eliot, because I really take, particularly for people in her position, take my position as a mentor and the opportunity to expose her to business opportunities and learn new things, et cetera. I take that very seriously and I put in a lot of time. And yes, there was that personal part. And so I was really hurt by this, and it was all I could do to not just go, you know what, I'm not even going to talk to you anymore. I know
Which is
that
so
there's
not you.
I know it's not, but I know you've given me
Fine
2 weeks notice, and you'd say you'd stretch it for 4, if we had other things. It's fine. I'm not even going to talk to you anymore. And that's the voice inside my head. That's how I was feeling. I was that personally invested and personally hurt.
I am so glad you're telling this story, because not only have I personally had this experience, but I've had so many clients have these conversations, and it always comes with this like dollop of shame with it. Like people are embarrassed and they think that they're weird or strange. I mean, this is solidly at the top of things that I've always wished I could broadcast as like, you are not alone, that you're not the only one who feels this way.
I hope not. Because boy,
not.
It's a horrible
well,
thing.
No, because I think, and that's the whole thing. Like many things in the world, I think just the sheer fact that there is some kind of story in your head or in the ecosystem of business or whatever that you're not allowed to feel that way makes it twice as bad. Like it doubles down on the problem of all of it. Whereas just even knowing like, oh, everybody does that, I think you can move through these things more quickly, because not only are you having this feeling of like, oh, like abandonment sort of feeling.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
But you also don't feel like you're allowed to have those abandonment feelings. So you're trying to like shove them into some back room or something, which I think is always problematic.
Well, and what you're not allowed to do, though, you're really not allowed to stop talking to your employees. And
I'm not sure what context of allowed that you're using, because I know there are certainly lots of people who do take those kinds of paths.
It's not a course that I'd recommend. It's certainly not a role model that or an example you want to show, but it was certainly an impulse I had to suppress.
Yeah, I think that there are.
Let me just emphasize, she did nothing wrong.
No, of course. No, well, that almost makes it worse, because then they're like leaving you. And to me, it's a little bit not the same, but kind of the same as that meme that goes around that says, what if you invest in people and then they leave? And it says, well, what if you don't and they stay?
Right.
Like, being a leader, building a team, I think there's so much wrong with any just even suggestion that you would try and do that, not throwing your heart into people and into their potential and, what they could be and how you might grow them. And it's a very emotionally invested kind of way that you throw yourself behind people. And I think there's a lot of downside to not doing that. But by doing that, you put your heart in it. There's a horse phrase. This is going to sound like a total tangent.
Phrase.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm not going to be able to remember the phrase. And I hope I'm getting this right. I read it somewhere one time. There is a phrase about how you get a horse to jump over, the jumping thing.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. There's a
the video helps.
I'm making this hand gesture. There is something about you throw your heart over the and there's a much better story there. I'll find it and we'll talk. But it's something about you throw your heart over, and it's the French word or something that's how you get the horse to
like
jump, is that you throw. Yes, I'm talking about the steeplechase things. Thank you. But you kind of have to throw your heart into people, I think. I mean, that's the only way I know how to do it. Maybe some people are better at that, but I definitely hear all sorts of this version of like weird emotional dynamics. I've heard people be, there's certainly the abandonment thing. There's, your favorite person leaves, and then anytime after that someone wears a suit, you think they're leaving you. They're like, oh my God, they're interviewing. What do I do? They're going to leave me. They're just all these metaphors to healthy and unhealthy relationships that you have that are 100% personal relationships, that I think pretending like we don't get into some of those same dynamics and patterns is a real downfall of business.
Well, and it was funny when you mentioned every time somebody wears a suit, because you said that and I was like, that's ridiculous. And then, of course, I started thinking, oh, well, I do remember that fairly soon after that happened, if somebody closed their door, I'm like, my impulse, my head voice was like, who are you talking to? What's going on? Where are you going now? How was your week?
Not your normal way of being.
I noticed that you're leaving early. Are you meeting somebody? Is that just a friend? Is that that's kind of the dialogue that I have, like the most needy, horrible.
Is she pretty? Is she better than me?
Is she better than me? Do you like her better? How long have you known her? Were you talking to her? Were you thinking about her when you were talking to me? So
I know it's these incredibly like embarrassing things to admit, but I think those dynamics happen.
Well, and they do. And because I also think that you have to recognize, you said throwing your heart into people, but without that personal engagement, without really reaching people on a personal level, I think what you also filter out is loyalty. I think that the personal engagement is where loyalty lives. Because if somebody thinks as an employee or as a customer, no, it's with Eliot, it's not personal. It's just business to him. Right?
They apparently don't know you very well then.
Well, no, but if they think that, even though there is a business relationship, we're not going out for drinks and we're not doing whatever, but it's a business relationship. The moment somebody starts to think, well, he doesn't care personally, it's just business, I think is the moment that they would consider leaving based on price or 5% discount or for any reason. Somebody is 2 miles closer when they have an appointment or whatever it is. So you have to, I believe, invest personally to get that personal investment back, which is what we want.
Well, and I do think there's something about that loyalty. I mean, I've had people leave. My favorite assistant, I had this woman working for me for a little while, and she was just so good, so good, so good. And she was everything. As I like get a little misty-eyed. And she took a job out west, working for, not Teach for America, but one of those things. Like I couldn't even argue with it. It was everything she was passionate about. It was something doing good in the world. Like everything about it was perfect. And so there was no way to argue with that. In those situations, I'm actually much, much better about digging deep into my loyalty that for them of like, no, this is a good opportunity. Right. It's nothing I did wrong. It's nothing, I couldn't make this situation any better. Like I can't fight that. I can't compete with that. I mean, I find it hard not to take it much more personally when it's not one of those sorts of things where I've just decided to go do this other thing, for what feels like a silly reason. You're like, wait, what? Like, wait, what was it about me? But I think that loyalty piece can go both ways of how you kind of manage it. Because some of my favorite leaders I've worked with, at the end of the day, they love to have this open dialogue with people about, is this the right place for you?
Exactly.
Is it? And I think there's something so admirable about that, of having that always be just an open conversation, as long as it is. And if there's anything we can do to make it more that way, then I'm all over it, but if there comes a day where this is not the right or best place for you, then let's talk about that and see what what needs to happen to help that move on. And
I did have an identical situation to that. I had a lawyer who worked here who I really loved, who was great, but I knew that what she was doing for me was not either her highest and best use or where her passion lay. And I knew that she would probably stay for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 years. But because inertia is a very powerful force, and she liked the people here. We had a great relationship and she fit in well, but ultimately that's not a professional reason for staying. And we had a number of conversations about what her best role, ultimately her best role wasn't really practicing law. It was working in a legal related field, using her credential and her education experience as a lawyer, but not practicing. And, she did, after a number of years, she found a position. And as soon as she said she was going to go for it, she found it. She talked to me about it. And I was like, oh, that's it. Yeah. That's perfect. And she's been there for 5, 6 years, something like that. Very happy. But so this is so interesting to me. So why you have such a tone right now? Did you go through that same kind of feeling when she left? So what was different about the two? Because they're actually quite similar stories in theory. They're quite similar. I'll tell you what was different. What was different is that time passed between the first one and the second one, and I had a chance to really think about what my reaction was and how. So it was the first time that somebody had done that, and I had really invested in her, and I had this, and maybe because we were still in the business honeymoon phase or whatever it was. And I know I put this in terms of dating or whatever, not because it's, veering into an inappropriate part, but I think it's so personal. I think that's the thing. I think trying to pretend that it's not a personal connection is part of the problem. So I don't know any other way to make that. But so I did spend a lot of time thinking about that first instance and really coming to grips with the fact that I was angry and hurt at somebody who was making an excellent move in their profession, doing absolutely nothing to show disrespect or disloyalty to me, and was using her agency to move forward in her career. Everything I should be applauding, everything a good mentor should try and foster. And I was angry and hurt by this.
It's almost like being mad that your kids are leaving for college.
Yeah. I mean, right. How dare they? So the difference between the first and second is because I really had to shape up.
Well, and not only that, but what I also love about that story is that you did not take your first experience and decide that what you had learned from that was don't invest your heart in people.
Yeah. Or, well, that's just the way it is. I'm just keeping it real. That's how I feel. And that's it. And how people say there's this horrible outcome. I wouldn't change a thing, when they're interviewed. Yeah. And I realized it was tying me up in knots. And then I realized that I was the problem. And that was kind of a difficult thing for me to come to grips with, because I saw myself as a business owner, a business leader, somebody responsible for people, somebody who is supposedly mature. And one of my titles, one of the things people call attorneys is counselor. And I'm supposed to counsel people. And this is how I'm reacting. So yeah, I had to have a, as some people say, no offense, but a come to Jesus with myself and say, this is just not right.
Not healthy. I know. One of my very first, I do think there is something about the time of it, because my story that most resonated for me when you were telling that was the first time that I had hired someone and just invested. I do the same thing. I'm like, we'll be together forever, and I'll see how you could. You're so smart. You could be this person, and then you could come on and like take over my role, and I'll do this. I plan out this whole princess bride future for all of us, which I've also gotten better about not doing, about being a little bit more realistic and the daydream, but still throwing my heart into people. But I had really thrown a lot into her. And when she decided to leave, I was so crushed. I struggled with speaking to her. I struggled with putting a genuine smile on my face. I'm like, oh, that's great. You're like, enjoy your time. But part of that I think does come with just, with time and growing into somebody who can talk more openly with people about what's the right thing for you. And because at the end of the day, do you really want someone staying who isn't doing something they're passionate about, who isn't, actively functioning in their highest and best use, who isn't, whatever the fill in the blanks for what would make it better if it's not the right thing for them.
Yeah. And one of the concepts that I've been taken with, that I'm reminded is you hear it in professional sports. You hear about a coaching tree. So people would talk about Bill Belichick, for example, from the New England Patriots, and his coaching tree, people who had worked for him as coaches, and they became head coaches in their own right. And so that becomes a branch of his tree. So he trained this person, he trained that person, he trained this person. And so I've heard a lot of commentators over the years talking about the success of Bill Belichick's coaching tree, or, Coach K in basketball, his coaching tree. And these people, in my example, Coach K or Bill Belichick, become very invested not in who stays with them, but the success of the people in their careers, even independent of them, because they see as a real feather in their cap, to mix metaphors, as a real feather in their cap, that they've developed a number of professionals who are very strong in their own right. And what a credit to them that those people can be traced back to the origins in his organization.
Well, I think that's the whole part. But there's something I want to back up to very quickly, but after I say this, but that's the whole part. I think you said come to Jesus, but the getting right with yourself part, I think, is looking in the mirror and, really making a decision about whether you're investing in these people in some almost perverse way, is imagining that they're now yours forever.
Right.
Or are you investing in them for as long as that relationship is mutually beneficial to both of you, and then, enjoying seeing them go off into the world and do great things. That is by far the healthier way to hold it. But I want to back up for just a second, because I love all the ways we're talking about, holding this a little more healthily and, sort of a more, maybe even a more mature way, or a more sort of global perspective on it, to not feel that way. But I don't want to step over the fact that part of what got me excited when you told this story is I really want people to know that it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
Now, is it okay to be, spiteful and, vindictive and cranky about how you, probably not, but that there's no shame in feeling hurt or left, or abandoned in the moment, because I hear these stories all the time. And every time I've heard somebody talk about it, they talk about it as if they think that they're the only person, that they're somehow flawed, that they're somehow doing business wrong if they feel that way. And I think it's a very, very natural way to feel. And I've heard so many stories of it that I know it is a very common way to feel, but nobody ever talks about that.
And I will tell you that I think the reverse is also true. Not only is it not flawed to at least feel that way, I believe, but I think that arguably it's flawed to feel the way of, yeah, he was with me for about 5 years. He left. I don't care. Just moved on. Next man up.
Right.
Now maybe there's not, to me, if those are my two choices between having to deal with and suppress the hurt because I personally invested in them, or just training myself so that, see a hole, fill a hole. It's the next man up. They leave.
But I guarantee you don't invest in that person.
You don't invest in that person. I'd have to deal with the personal part, because again, if my North Star is having these people think, geez, one of the best things I ever did in my professional career was to associate with Eliot, I don't get that result unless I personally invest.
I often think of this metaphor of like my inkjet printer, the paper thingy that you put paper into the feeder. I don't know what the paper feeder, I guess it's called the paper feeder. It goes, both sides move together. If you move one, the other side moves with it. So you can move it into envelopes, but you don't have to move one side and then the other. You move it and it goes zoop into the middle or zoop out to the sides. I think of all emotional things that way as well. Like you can't say like, oh, I don't want to feel that yucky stuff, and not also move in the other side of the continuum about how much joy you get to feel. And the same with this, like you can't invest in people and want them, create a situation where they're going to say, this was a great place to work, and somehow save yourself from, like, you can't selectively numb out your emotions. I think both sides of it come together at once.
I love that. The paper feeder. So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
You
can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us. Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Eliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.